Jaws harness is awesome. Often in dip mics I grip with my paw prints, armed with the sharpest wit, far from harmless.
Hello, and you were listening to a Barrie Colts podcast. Today's a little bit different than normal. I don't have Ryan MacArthur with me today, but luckily we have Colts General Manager Jason Ford with us. How are you doing today, Jason?
Thanks, Ryan. I'm really good. Thank you.
Excellent. So basically a lot of the stuff that we're going to go over here is the OHL draft, which we just passed here, and I don't think that we're going to have anybody better to kind of fill us in on some of the players coming in than Jason here. So obviously the fourth overall pick that we got was Brandt Clark, who obviously had great success with the Don Mills Flyers this season. So how excited were you guys when the fourth pick came and he was available? Was that someone that you kind of were hopeful would be there in that spot, or?
Yeah, I think really it is obviously a draft and there's a process to it and you have to respect that. But I think when Shane Wright, when he was declared that he was going to get into the draft, then, it was either at that point, it was either going to be Flint or Kingston who was going to get the one pick. So I think when that was solidified towards the end of the season there, we knew that, and then we had heard that Flint was interested in taking off, and that was kind of around the OHL Cup time. So then, we start to prepare ourselves for who's going to become available when our pick rolls around, and we had Clark there. We had a couple other players there, but at the end of the day, when it looked like he was going to be there, for us, we had him rated as the top defenseman in the draft right from day one. To be quite honest with you, we kind of said, if the Shane Wright doesn't get in this year, or something happens there differently with the standings, I don't think he falls to us at 4. We kind of, I think we lucked out there a little bit, to be honest with you. So, Brandt's, he's an excellent two-way defenseman. Obviously, he has a ton of offensive upside. That's why he's picked that high. We knew the pedigree with brother. The last draft, his brother was kind of in the mix for our pick when his minor midget year. Just lots of character in the kid. He's got leadership ability. If everything goes well for Brandt Clark here, I see him as an NHL first round consideration when his draft year rolls around in 2000. I guess that'll be 2021. But I think it was a pretty much we collaborate a lot like any other team here. It's just not one person making the decision all the time. Obviously somebody's got to, make the decision. We try to do it collectively. Dale will get out and see some players. Rob and myself, and our scouting staff, the way we do it, we have a lot of crossover. So, hey, if there was somebody in the group that really didn't want to take Brandt Clark, we obviously would have heard it out and gone through the arguments and everything like that. But when it looked like he was going to be there, it was a decision we were all comfortable with, and we're really happy it worked out. We ended up getting him.
Yeah, no, as far as a lot of the stuff that I've heard, a lot of people are anticipating that he's going to be one of the in the future, obviously, even in the OHL, one of the top defenders. So obviously bringing in a guy that has, that much hype behind his name, obviously earned. What kind of, as far as his game and his play, what can Colts fans expect from him when they see him play? Well,
Aaron Ekblad went first overall in the NHL, and that's obviously a big, a wealthy comparison. Aaron Ekblad was arguably one of the best defensemen that had ever played here in Barrie. I started here in the early 2000s and saw, I heard people talk about Martin Skula back in the day. Personally, I saw Ekblad. I saw half a year of Alex Pietrangelo when he was here. I don't want to put, obviously he's a young player, and you don't want to put him on a pedestal too much. But in all reality, of his age group, he's the best defenseman now, and I could fully expect in a couple of years he'll be the best defenseman for the Ontario group of kids. And I think I feel comfortable in saying that. Well, I know I feel comfortable in saying that because, the kid's like, he's a sponge. He wants to learn, and he's willing to put in the work and train and do everything. His family and his parents were, growing up with his brother, training was always big for them. We went through the process, interviewed the family. We got, a real hardworking type of family, raised two boys, and actually they have apparently the younger sisters are supposed to be a stud player too. So,
oh really?
Yeah. So but I, as far as what he can bring, you just a guy that it's going to be hard to get off the ice. Like, he's got a really good engine on him. He's a competitor. He loves to play the game. He loves to win. And his Don Mills team obviously had lots of success this year. When he went to the Canada Winter Games in Lethbridge, he was a leading force for them there. For a defenseman, it's going to take a little while to mature and stuff like that. I think, the difference, I would say, getting back to the Ekblad thing, I would say, like, his hockey brain is that on par of Ekblad's. Coming into the league, he's a year older than Aaron, but he's not as big. When Aaron came into the league, he was 6'3.5". Yeah. 6'4". In the playoffs that year, playing the 67s, he had a beard. Yeah. I think he shaved the first half of the year, and then he let his beard go the second half of the year. But that's the differences there. I think you never know. Like, at the end of the day, Brant Clark is 6'1" and a bit. You could see his frame. I wouldn't be surprised if he grew a bit more, but whether he grows more or not, he's going to be an excellent defenseman and I think a surefire first round candidate for the NHL draft.
That's definitely very good hyping anyways. I don't think everyone's obviously excited about him, so it's going to be great to see him, especially when everything gets going here. And so we'll go on to the next pick that you guys made. So that was in the second round, 24th overall, Ryan Del Monte. Hopefully I said that right.
Yeah.
Okay, there we go.
Yeah. His story on him. His father, played in the league. Was part of the Peterborough and Sarnia organizations back in that was the early 90s. His dad played pro in Italy and over in Europe and stuff like that. So, to be completely honest, when we first saw Del Monte playing Bantam, Major Bantam, we don't do like a ton of Bantam scouting. We do a little bit, but we just find the kids change so much from year to year. But we did have some time and got out to see Del Monte play, and liked his skill a whole lot. The thing about Ryan Del Monte this year is he battled a few injuries, but I was at the game, basically his last game of the season. Was in the semifinal of the Marlies tournament where his team won, and they made it to the finals and lost to Don Mills in overtime eventually. But that was, essentially his last game. So that, I think we know that his draft stock, so to speak, would have slipped because of, not as many viewings. So we really thought enough of his skill, and we had him right in that mix all year. Like, we saw him as a first-round pick in terms of skill. I think he's I think one of the best playmakers of the draft, and I think he's going to put up a lot of assists and put up a lot of points here over time, as long as we can obviously get him. He does have an NCAA commit to Harvard, but I think nothing's obviously it's definitely not a surefire thing. We have rookie camp coming up here. We hope he can come here and get a sweater with all the other draft picks and be part of that process. If it takes a little bit more time, he needs more time to think about it, then, that's obviously fine too. We've had good, open dialogue with the family. After the draft, they seemed, pretty happy that we drafted him. So, we still got work to do to get him here, but I think if it all works out, we're getting a real skilled player there in the second round. He's a player that at that age level for the last how long, few years anyways, he's been regarded as one of the top skilled players. So we did our homework on him. I talked to people that have been on the ice with him before, guys that played in the OHL. One player, obviously you're going to hear a variance of opinions, but one former OHLer that played here in Barrie and has actually worked on the ice with Ryan. he went as so far to say is he's at that age, he has the most skill that he's ever seen. So that's, this is a kid that's played with, a lot of players over the years and played in the GTHL himself when he was the same age. So he knows, where the how to gauge a reading on a player. So, that's just one of, various opinions we got on Ryan. But, at the end of the day, he's a hockey player, and I think he wants to be a pro. So, where his path goes next, we still have, obviously it's to be determined, and we still have some work to do on it.
Well, the good thing is that there's the dialogue there that you guys are conversing, and, Ryan hyped him a lot with me. MacArthur, he was someone that, when you selected him, he was kind of expecting that he might have been gone at that point in the draft already. So to him, he felt like it was a steal. So yeah, and I put a lot of stock in what Ryan says. He's kind of our go-to guy as far as that side of things.
Yeah,
so
I don't know if Ryan saw him. I don't know when he saw him first. He'd obviously be able to answer that. But the GTHL All-Star game there in January, he had an excellent game. He was the MVP of that game. I think a lot of people, started to really realize how much skill he had maybe at that point. I'm sure, other teams would have been on him before. But like I said, that All-Star game was actually I think it was December, but, he didn't play really after the Marlies tournament. So, if you didn't have a great read on the kid, you would have had to go by, what you had heard from other people that saw him before. So, he wasn't, he's basically still rehabbing, the injury. I mean, I suppose he could have played in the OHL Cup if he really wanted to push it, but at the end of the day, it's he could go.
It's a bit of a race.
Yeah, it's exactly. A marathon, not a sprint, and he wants to get ready for his next season. So, we hope obviously that next season can be in a Barrie Colts uniform.
Well, us as well. So, and then we'll go on next. So we into round 3, which was the 45th overall pick, and it was Jacob Frasca.
Yeah, Jacob Frasca. That's a family. I think you're going to hear a couple more Frascas drafted here. He has two younger brothers. Actually, he has 3 younger brothers. I think there's 5 of them, and they all play hockey. The oldest one, Jordan, was a 2001 draft pick of Windsor Spitfires, and we had time for his brother Jordan. We interviewed him before the draft, got his family in, and we just ended up not selecting him. But with Jacob here, Jacob's got a big frame on him. He, basically it was him and Braden Kressler who, for the most part, ran that Mississauga Senators team this year. And Kressler was a second rounder by Flint. But Jacob Frasca is a big strong two-way center or winger. We think he can play the middle. He's a right shot. He plays the game the right way. He can do more than chip in on the offense. We think that he can put up some numbers. He's not a so-called a flashy player. His skill level is very good. His compete level is very good. He always keeps his feet moving in the offensive zone. Obviously you put a premium on skill in these drafts. But having a player like Jacob, who he's still very skilled, but he's more you're looking more a two-way guy that you need to play against other teams' top lines. Jacob nursed a bit of a back injury towards the end. Was a heavy minute player for this Mississauga Sens team. His numbers were good. I would see him as when we drafted Cordell James there in the 5th round of that 96 draft. I would say with Frasca, he's maybe a James type player, but with maybe a little more upside because he's 6'3". Maybe a little. I think he definitely has some more skill at the same age than James. So just to kind of give you a bit of a gauge on it, what kind of player Frasca could be. I mean, he's a big, wide-bodied kid that really loves the game. His compete level is very good. So he's got a lot of good things going for Jacob Frasca.
I mean, as far as a name for Colts fans to kind of get excited about, everyone loved Cordell here. So, I don't think you're going to get too much of a better hype than that for the kids. So, then we're going to go round 5 was the next selection. It was the 90th overall pick. Now, I thought that I was going to have trouble with Del Monte, but Vladislav, maybe you could help me up on this because I struggled with Picard when we got him. I think I went 2 podcasts calling him Pikash. I was lucky enough that Daryl sent me a kind message on on Twitter saying, just so you know, it's not Pakash, it's Pakar.
Daryl Mabley.
So, so I mean, I figured I'm not going to get somebody better to correct me on the proper enunciation of a name than the guy who actually says it over the PA at the arena. So what can you tell us about him?
Okay, so Vlad is a player. Basically, he's been playing the GTHL for 2 years. I went and interviewed him. Basically, he's here with his mother, chasing the dream. Wants to be an NHL player, so he's living in. They have a place in Vaughan. Him and his mother. His mother works. Actually still works for like a company in Russia, but kind of online kind of thing. But he's a player that he's got. He can shoot the puck like an OHLer already. He has OHL skill. He has more than OHL size. He's a good 6'3". He's a big, strong kid. He's got a mean streak to him. I think he's a pretty tough kid. I think he skates pretty well. He played a North York Rangers team that was kind of like you had your upper echelon of the GTHL this year. The first couple of teams, and then maybe another team. They were kind of like the fourth, fifth, sixth team. So, I don't know, with Vlad, his English is pretty good. He goes to high school here. Like some of the Russians you ever see, like they finish school over there or you kind of don't hear about it kind of thing. So, I don't know, just from a character perspective, Vlad is a kid that's, like I said, he's here chasing the dream. He's working pretty hard at it behind the scenes from what we understand. And, he's one of those kids that he has an OHL body already. So, I mean, he could play in the OHL next year. For sure. It's just a question of, we want to get him more touches, get him, improve his skill level over time. So, where he develops next, whether it be, with the Colts next year or, in between a call-up situation where we play him in some games and he develops major midget or, we have to see from there. So with him being obviously a Russian heritage and stuff, he playing tier 2 for him next year, it's a little more difficult to do. We're working with his agent to see the next steps for him. But he's an exciting player that we felt like that. He has the size and skill and compete, and he skates well for a guy that size. So he's an interesting prospect.
Well, having the size already is, that's definitely a huge advantage. So, like you said, just kind of working on the skills and kind of that, that stuff that can, through development that he can work on and build from. So,
yeah, he's got a lot of the tools. Like he has really all the tools and he has the size. So, I mean, I don't, being a Russian player in the GTHL, you come over. I mean, sometimes people wonder. So I don't know personally, like we see something there. So that's why I went over to his house to see what behind the scenes, kind of what was going on, right? Just to do a little more homework on him. So I don't know. Everything checked out. We talked to his coaches. He's an interesting prospect that it wouldn't surprise me that he could make the team this year. If not, then I wouldn't surprise me if he's a regular in a Colts uniform and one of those kids that plays a few games, and could be an NHL prospect too, because he already has the size, and like I said, he shoots the puck really well, and there's lots of upside. Potential is sometimes they say is a dangerous word. I don't. Sometimes it could be, but I don't like to throw the word potential around. A ton. We like to. Be really, is the kid going to be a player or not? And I think with Vlad, he definitely has a chance to be a player.
Well, with potential, I mean, it's kind of like an assumption more or less, right? So you always kind of project
everybody
how
has
you think
potential.
Right? Exactly, right? So it's if they've got the other tools there that are stuff that can either be worked on or whatever, I mean, that's an advantage anyway. So I think a big thing too is that other side of it. Like everyone, when they think of the draft, I think they kind of picture just the scouting side of things and not so much the going to the homes and the meeting family and stuff like that. And obviously that being a factor, it is a factor, and it kind of gives you an idea not only of the abilities and the quote, the potential, but also the what kind of kid it is and, how they are off the ice, which is obviously almost as important as obviously the skill level. So
if one thing I was going to actually point out before we made that pick, I don't know if you remember, we had a 4th round pick earlier in the week. So it was 66 overall. So that's actually between where Nebraska was 45 and Vlad was 90. So we would have had a pick in 66 right in between the draft, and we traded that to Saginaw for a third and 21 and a sixth. And we thought, I don't know for sure. I'd have to go back and look at the list a little bit of where we're at that point in the draft. We might have just taken Vlad at 66. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So
totally.
the way we looked at it, we picked up an extra third for trading purposes or whatever, drafting purposes for down the road. Got another 6 for doing that. I think it worked out very well. That was just something that I.
It's huge to be able to pick him up. Like if you were anticipating possibly picking him up a round sooner, and the fact that he was still available, it kind of.
There was the only, the only con, I guess, is you could say for the trade to look at the other way, was that too big of a gap between 45 and 90 at that point in the draft. Mm-hmm. But the way in retrospect, in hindsight, we would just do that trade any day of the week. Mm-hmm. We felt like we were going to get the same type of player there at 90 or 92, so we did it.
Yeah, no, and that's great. And then speaking of 92, that was the next pick, which was the 5th round, and that was a goaltender, Ansel Holt.
Yeah, so Ansel Holt he went to the top U.S. development program, their top 40 selection camp. They call it top 40, but there's actually a few more than 40 players there. But they had their selection camp. It was right after the OHL Cup, and they took a goalie, Gibson Homer, and he was I'd say a clear-cut number 1 goalie in the U.S., and they took another player, and then Ansel, he just came up short. But I mean, Ansel, the conversations we had with him, Ike Rhodes, our U.S. scout, had with him before the draft, was that he was very interested in the OHL. And after we drafted him, he was so excited. Somebody told me they saw a video on him over this past weekend or something, Twitter, YouTube, I'm not sure where it was. And he was like, he's really happy that he got drafted in the OHL to Barrie. So with Ansel, his team, with goalies, like this year, I think it was a year where, ourselves, you probably pull a lot of the OHL teams, would have had Gaudreau as the clear-cut number 1 favorite, the goalie from North Bay that went to Sarnia in the first round. Mm-hmm. And after that, it was really just a question of who you felt like you had more time for, but it was a little more difficult to really decipher, who the second best goalie was versus the 14th best goalie. Mm-hmm. It was actually a year where there weren't as many goalies taken in the draft. If you actually look at the overall numbers, it was a little down for goalies. But with Holt, he was a guy that, personally I saw a couple times, and I saw him play the CompuWare team, which was basically, arguably the best midget team or minor midget U16 team in the whole U.S. They had, Dylan Duke, they had Gallagher, Brian Savage's son, Pastujov. They won the Silver Stick tournament back in November in Whitby, right? And Ansel had beat them 4 times this year, that team, right? So mm-hmm. I don't know. I compare it a little bit. I'm not saying that Ansel Holt's going to be the next Blackwood here, but what cemented us on taking Blackwood was we identified him as a goalie that we liked and we had to take, not in the super high rounds, mm-hmm. right? So, and then going into the OHL Cup, his Thunder Bay team, he was in goal when they beat the Whitby Wildcats, and the Whitby Wildcats were the UMHA champs. So, there's sometimes like along the way when the season goes, you run out of games to scout, or however you want to call it. But when somebody does something like that, when this goalie beats the arguably the top team in the U.S. 4 times, mm-hmm. like you've got to take note of that, right? With Blackwood, it was kind of the same. Now Blackwood was only once; he was playing for Thunder Bay, and they didn't have a lot of great competition. And when he did that kind of like, okay, we're taking Blackwood, and that's it.
Just helped solidify the decision.
So when Ansel, I would say, the fact he wanted to really look at the OHL as a serious possibility, and the fact that he played against some pretty good competition and been very good in a quiet way, we'll see. His size definitely is. There's no issue there. So we're really looking forward to see where he fits in here in the rookie camp coming up. We look at it as just another really good goalie to have here in the pipeline.
I mean, it's always good to have a good stock of that. And then we'll go on to the 6th round pick, the first of 2 6th-round picks, number 107, and that is Trey. Here's another one that I'm probably going to butcher
Trey
here.
Sagrazewski.
I'm glad to have you here to kind of help me out with some of these, because otherwise, if it was me and Ryan, we'd be all over the place with it, man. It would be a mess. So
Yeah, no worries. He's actually a little bit. He's listed in the OHL site here at 5'7". He's a little bit bigger than that, but our. To be perfectly honest with you, because of where Zagrzewski played, he played in Wisconsin, and his team didn't really get into Ontario. So my viewings of him are just really limited, you know. So we're going here with, you know, a couple of our guys saw him, but the guy that pushed for him here, you know, is Ike Rhodes, our head U.S. scout, right? So with Zagrzewski, I mean, you know, I don't know if it's because of, you know, because he's playing in Wisconsin high school, like, you know, there was kind of limited teams on him. There was like a couple of teams that have scouts in those areas or can at least get to those areas. So I don't know, like we think he's a really good player. Like I kind of, you know, compared him to like a Peter Forsberg, you know, poor man's obviously, but, you know, plays the game hard, has some skill. You know, he's a highly rated player by Central Scouting, who does the, you know, the rankings overall for the league. Now, obviously, that's not Bible, but you know, it's something.
It's a good reference.
It's a good reference point to some players that maybe you don't have as many viewings on. But with Trey, it said he's coming to our rookie camp here next weekend, or this weekend coming up. Sorry, the 13th, 14th. So we're, you know, really excited to see him on a sheet of ice against guys his own age. And you know, I don't know. We kind of feel this could be a really good value pick, a little bit of a steal here. So, you know, if he's not ready for the OHL next year, you know, we'll have to see where he plays for developing moving forward. And obviously, make sure that we keep close tabs on him, even though he's far away. I feel like there's a definite prospect there, and we're really excited about it. We think that he's committed to playing in the OHL at some point.
And I mean, that's obviously what you guys want anyways, right? It's just not only the skill level, but the willingness and the desire to be here, you know? So,
yeah.
And then actually you had the following pick after that, which was 6th round still, 108 overall. This is a name that's familiar here for Colts, but actually technically too, if you look at it. Kai Greaves, defenseman.
Yeah. Kai, so Kai, obviously his older brother here is Jet Greaves. Funny that his name's Kai, the same as Edmonds, but it's just the way it works out. But anyways, he, you know, with Kai, we saw him as with the Alliance League. He played for Cambridge. They played, you know, London and Elgin Middlesex, and they play in that loop there. But you know, we saw him as one of the better defensive prospects on the team. He played up a few games with the Cambridge Junior B team. He practiced with them a lot. He got better as the year went on. You know, he's they've got him listed on the site here about 6.5. I'd say that's what he is. He might be a little bit more. So basically, I think he's got about 1.5 inches, 2 inches on his older brother.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's a right shot defenseman that has a pretty good hockey brain. He's a pretty good athlete, has a pretty good frame on him. You know, and to be perfectly honest with you too here, like, you know, we've seen Jet here and how he works and how he conducts himself. You know, we've gotten to know the family pretty good since we've drafted Chet.
Mm-hmm. And
even, you know, we interviewed Chet, had his parents in here to the rink a month before his actual draft. But my point being is we've gotten to know the family more and know the way the kids conduct themselves. So I think that we would have had Kai rated a little bit higher because I think we know more what we're getting before we get the kid, right? So, you know, we have to see how everything kind of plays out. But, you know, to have him developing with you know, Cambridge Junior B or maybe the Collingwood team, we'll have to, you know, wait and see how things work out with them as our primary affiliate to see who we get their way. But he's a kid that can, you know, definitely think that he can benefit from a year of developing, and as he grows into his body and matures and just gets a little bit quicker. But you know, he's a definite interesting prospect that we got there, and we feel that we have a real good, you know, book on him and read on him, and you know, I think it's a good pick there, 108.
Well, excellent. And then, like you said, obviously having knowing the family already, that being a part of what you do scout, trying to just kind of figure out where they come from and stuff like that. That's information that you kind of already had, obviously dealing with Jet. So that obviously would have been an advantage for you when making that selection as well. So, so 7th round, 127, center Mark McPhee.
Yeah, Mark McPhee, we had him rated a little bit higher. We have scout in Ottawa, Mark Bissonnette, that I saw, Rob Stewart got down to Ottawa 3 or 4 times this year. I went down, I think it was 3 times, 4 times, the same, different trips. So like the way the Ottawa group does it, they play basically all their games on Saturday and Monday. So we can do these trips and get down and see most of the league in one trip, go back for another trip, see the league. But earlier in the year, we went to Ottawa, get a look at the whole league. There was another player on their team, Ranveer Gill, who the 67s took as a local pick. We liked Gill too, but we heard that he probably wasn't going to come to the OHL unless it was just Ottawa. But that being said, when scouting that Ottawa Junior Sens team, Mark McPhee was a player that I noticed him on the power play. I likely had a ton of skill, and thought that in a year's time, he's definitely going to have the skill level to play in the OHL. It's like a lot of these other drafts when you get to this point, midpoint in the draft, where there's something that they need some development somewhere in major midget or junior A. As far as I know, he's maybe have a spot for the Ottawa Junior Sens team. If he was, with any of these draft picks here too, if they're not ready, if they're willing to move up to Collingwood and get seasoned there, we're going to have some of them play there. But of course, Collingwood for these 03 players, they can only carry 2 of them full time. So it's just a question of who it might be. But with McPhee, he goes with OJS, plays a year at Junior A there. That could be a great development route for him. But just, a good skilled 2-way center that we see offensive upside. We're in the 7th round there. That's something that we had him rated a little bit higher. And the way drafts go, we had Zagradzebski and Greaves, ahead of him. So, somebody that knows the loop told me, if you got McPhee in the 5th round, again, this is all pre-draft speculation. We hear this a lot, but it would be, they thought that would be, he had more skill than a 5th rounder, and we got him in the 7th round. So, we'll see, right?
Well, that's always a good gauge. I mean, that's really the only thing that you can go off of anyway. So, I mean, as far as a benchmark, that works out. So, to be able to get him in the 7th round is obviously a huge advantage anyway. Yeah. So, that worked out well for you guys anyways.
We'll go over the next few picks here. I'll go over the 9th and 10th rounders were 2 forwards. We took Oliver Smith, who's actually a Sudbury. He's a northern kid that played the GTHL this year. With him, we see him as a player that, good, strong kid, a 2-way winger that seemed to improve as the year went on. And he's a name that we kind of took more note of towards the end. And his Rebels team had a pretty good finish to the year too. That certainly helped them. Blake Hall was a kid like the SCTA this year. If you look at the numbers for the Loop, Hamilton Bulldogs, Southern Tier, the Guelph team, there wasn't a ton of players drafted out of the SCTA, but we thought Blake Hall was a player that he's got the skill and size. It's just a question of some nights you go and you'd see more what he could be, and some other nights you go and you wouldn't see as much. But sometimes that with these teams in the SCTA this year, anyways, it's sometimes it's maybe a product of his team, not all being that great. And here we're looking at this is a 10th round pick, Blake Hall, that we feel he has OHL upside, and if he needs a year of tier 2 or a new year of development somewhere, then you kind of, I wouldn't say you can't go wrong, but I think the kid has as much upside, and getting him part of our stable was something we wanted to do, right? Marty Williamson, who just joined the team, he coached a major midget with the Niagara team out that way, so he knew of the kid a little bit from playing up and kind of seeing him a little bit, and he saw him play some really good games. We saw him play some good games, and then games were not as much of a factor, but Marty had seen him play some really good games over the course of the year, so we thought there at that stage in the draft he'd be a good pick there. Now with the 8th rounder, Thomas Stewart, he was again another right shot D. It seemed just the way it worked out. Usually it's more difficult to get the right shot D, but our first 3 D were taken were right shots this draft. Before we took Ryan Cook in the 12th round, he was the first left shot. But with Thomas Stewart, he played on a Vaughan team where we knew the coach pretty good, and kind of a team a little bit similar to Mississauga Sens, where they were kind of revolved around a few players on their team. Kind of a middle pack team. I think they played the Nats in the first round, and they got swept in their first round. So more like a middle pack GTHL team.
Mm-hmm.
But Thomas Stewart, like we had him here for an interview, and his dad is a good 6'1", but his mother is a tall lady too, and it just kind of like when we went through the process with Thomas here, like I bring him down to our dressing room, measure him on our own scale. I don't know. I learned from a long time starting this business. Obviously, you have your measurements and stuff, and you can go by a computer screen and that. But when you actually have the kid in and you put him on your own scale and shake his hand, and look at him, and all that, all that kind of stuff, just to get to know them, it resonates with you in a different way, and it settles in a different way than just maybe looking off a computer screen. Don't get me wrong, looking off a computer screen can work as well, but it's something about this Thomas Stewart kid that when you shook his hand and you knew like he was going to do whatever he could to get in the OHL. Again, we're not. Sometimes it's hard to predict a player if he's going to grow taller or not. But if I had to put money on it, I would say Thomas Stewart's going to grow taller. Yeah. So there's a prospect there that he's a really sharp kid. Sometimes when you don't play on one of the best GTHL teams or the best teams in your area, you might get overlooked a little bit. So I'm not saying he was overlooked, but I think there's lots of good things about Thomas Stewart that maybe will push him into the OHL in a year or two down the road.
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. And like you said, even with looking at the computer screen, sometimes those numbers are kind of misleading anyways, because I remember earlier in the season, actually, my friend Jeff and I, we did a few player interviews just in the locker room, actually. And we were looking at that. So I think the first couple were with Bignell, and it was Picard. And I think they were listed on the website as 6'1" at the time. And then the last one was with Hill. And I think at the time he was listed as 6'2". But when you watch the interviews, Picard and Bignell were around my height. And then all of a sudden I'm with Hill, who apparently has
6'2".
He had like a whole human head on me. So when I was looking at the numbers, I was like, okay, obviously this either needed to be updated at the time. I haven't looked at it since then to see if that had been but it just goes to show that like the difference of when you do actually have them in, you have them on your scales, you kind of get a better representation of what might be documented. You never know when something is updated.
And I think too, these are kids that are 15 years old, 16 years old. So, they get measured at the Marlies tournament. They get measured at the Titans tournament in September. So September, December. I think most of them get measured at the Silver Stick too. But anyways, you might, it's like a player like Thomas Stewart, his team, I don't think they got measured towards the end, right? So with a player like this that we like at various points in the draft, I think I'd like to personally, get them in and meet them. And sometimes, this process, it isn't far from foolproof. Like we've had some players before we've taken late rounds that we thought were going to grow, and some of them didn't grow and some of them grew, but they started growing when they were like 18, 19. So their OHL career is kind of, ending, and they end up going sometimes NCAA and stuff like that. But, I don't know. The Keats list, they got him at 5'10.5". We measured him at about an inch or 3/4 of an inch taller than that already. So, if it takes a little bit of time, it takes a little bit of time too. But I don't know, going through this process and stuff with meeting some of those, I won't say obscure, but some of them are mid to later round draft choices, right? But at the end of the day, we're here, we're making the picks, and we always say to our guys, let's take players we want. We've really focused on that over the years of, maybe not just taking a value pick or some guy that we maybe don't like that much, but he's there in the 9th round. Rather than talk yourself into taking some guy because he's just there in the 9th round, you take these types of kids, and hopefully you put your bets on them, and then if you've done, you've got your information, and it's all falls into place, then in retrospect, you should have a better chance on hitting on some of these types of kids than taking the guy that just slips kind of thing, right? It happens in every draft. There's guys that are or the second round talent or third round talent, or that slipped to the seventh, eighth round for various reasons. So, I don't know. One of the ones I learned on it the most, he actually never played in a Colts uniform, was back in our '98 draft. We took Mario Ferraro in the 11th round. Now, the reason why I bring his name up is because he never played here, but he actually turned into a very good player. He went to as a 19-year-old, went to he ended up going Toronto Lakeshore Patriots and the college route. But he was a guy that turned into a good player, was invited to the National World Junior Evaluation Camp at Christmas time last season, and was second. I think he was second or third round pick to the Sharks, San Jose Sharks, right? So the point of my story here is that you look at Mario Ferraro, and we did this with him. His dad was like 6'1", his mom was 5'11", his 14-year-old sister was 5'10". And Mario came in here, he was like 5'9". So we knew, again, it's not 100%, but you have a really good idea that he's going to grow. And Mario did grow, but he grew a little bit later, and it timed out on us. But again, that's you go through this process, and sometimes you learn as much from the players you don't get as the players you do get.
Yeah,
right.
No, absolutely. As long as you're able to kind of take a learning experience from all sides, whether it be like you said, the guys that you bring in or the guys that don't necessarily come in, moving forward, that's always an advantage for you to kind of build from there. Anyways.
Yeah.
So which round? I got us off track there.
Yeah. Sorry. So we went Smith, Hall, and then we backtracked to Stewart. But I guess so. The next pick would be the Ryan Cook. So Ryan Cook was a big, good, strong support. 2AD, has a physical edge to him, played for the Guelph team in the SCTA, and quite frankly, we had, at various points, so some of our reports and some of our scouting on Ryan was that there's a very good chance he could play in the OHL because he has a big frame and his skill level is pretty good, and like I said, he brings a good element of physicality to the game, right? So his Guelph team was kind of I wouldn't say difficult one to figure out this year, but I mean, they had a good team, and then they got to the OMHAs, and they basically kind of caught up with them, and they were kind of the Anselmini was their top scorer. He went to London earlier in the draft. They had McIntosh, who we liked too, but his skating just needed a lot of work. But on various nights, you could have Ryan Cook as maybe their top prospect. So we got him in the 12th round. So he's a lot of these. One nice thing about, all drafts, it's nice to have this, but we call the player, immediately after we draft him, and I would say, doing this over the years, 98% of them are pretty excited about getting that phone call and being drafted. You always will get maybe a few kids that were told they were going to, by somebody, that they were going to be a second round pick, and they getting that call in the 8th round is a little disappointing, but. So what I was going to allude to here was, I'd say every player we drafted was very happy, and the reason I bring this up now is Ryan Cook was probably the one that was the most happy. Yeah. We took him in the 12th round. So, I think supposed to be a really good kid. It was a good interview. So, we'll see there. I mean, if he needs a year or two to develop, then, that's, with these picks in here, when we interview them and talk to them, we like to find out their backup plan, if they're going to play or if they're not going to play. Do they have a junior A team, or do they need, would they like maybe to go to Collingwood if it doesn't work? Or, those types of things. So, we don't but I mean, in reality, this is when you get into the 10, 11, 12, 13th rounds. These players, if you look at that 98 draft too, we took that draft. We had Broussard, Chiodo, Ruben Badenhorst all played a year in major midget and then came in, so you're going to have players like that, and the more you have, the better options you have, and hopefully going to make your team stronger.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And just having those extra options is always, hopefully anyways, could end up being beneficial. So, 13th round, right winger Bryce Richardson.
Yeah, he's a left shot winger, same team as Vlad Dvorensky. We took in the 5th round, and Bryce, there was a Luka Rayic player off that team drafted. I can't recall off the top of my head who drafted him, but he was kind of the top scorer. Richardson was a guy that brought some skill to that lineup, and he needs to. I think the biggest thing with him is strength. A lot of these kids, that's the case, but with him, he's a little get a bit of more of a skinnier frame on him, so he's really going to really need to get stronger. But he's a player that we have lots of time for his skill and what he can bring there at that point. And then with the next pick, the next pick was Kitchener team that had Marco Sikic drafted 3rd round, I believe, maybe 4th round. They had Braden Molman. They had a SOP kid, SOP last name. They had Luke Brishkowski, a defenseman, taken. They had, we had him at about 5-6 picks the whole year, that team. But Brown was a player that, he's about 6 foot, 6'1", needs to fill out a bit. He's not quite 6'1", he's like 6 foot, needs to fill out a bit. But we feel that he skates at an OHL level. We're pretty close to it right now. And, we feel like that maybe he can be a guy that slides in there and can become a good third liner on our team here moving forward in a couple of years. So, a guy that knows him from that area and stuff. Again, it's draft and everybody's obviously really excited and everything like that afterwards, which I'm not saying it's not obviously a bad thing, but sometimes, you just hear a lot of stuff. Somebody called and said that he's going to play in the OHL 110%. I think that was somebody that coached him and knows the kid. So, but what I will tell you, I was at a game, Kitchener, I forget who they were playing earlier in the year, and I started talking to somebody in the stands who was recruiting to coach next year's Kitchener minor midget team. So I started asking him about the kids that we liked on that team, and the one thing that kind of got back to me on Patrick Brown was that, he always had a smile on his face, just a tremendous kid, and, great work ethic to become a player. So, there was definitely no question marks like that. Like I said, he's got a really good high-end ability to skate, and he's a bit of a lankier frame. So basically the way that team went, they had Sikic, Sop, and Bowman, who played on a line for most of the year. Most of the time, we've seen him play, and Brown was on kind of another line, so his numbers weren't quite where the other guys on that team were. But that being said, maybe there's room for a little more offense, and he could definitely become a third line regular in the OHL.
And how big of a, as we mentioned with Bryce playing with Richardson with Vlad, for example, when you're looking at players and are you more inclined to maybe bring somebody else in who had played with another guy that you'd brought in? Do you think that I don't want to say something maybe they already have existing chemistry? Is that a factor or something that you would consider when making a selection?
Yeah, I would definitely say it's something you'd consider for sure. Yeah. To even take it a step further in this draft, North Bay took the Christopoulos twins there, and were the first few picks. So they were, they figured that the kids are brothers and teammates.
Yeah.
How could you go wrong, kind of thing. So, but the biggest thing here is it's a draft, and we get lots of players taken that we have rated higher and so on and so forth. But I wouldn't say with this particular pick here, Richardson, we took him just because of he played on the same team as Vlad, but that can definitely sometimes play into the equation when making your picks. But like I said, with Richardson, we like the skill and two different types of players, and really, if we get one of them to become a full-time member of the Colts, we're doing okay.
No, for sure. And then the 15th pick, which was the last one of the draft. Here's another one, just to keep consistent here. I'll try and get it right this time. But so Matthew Sardelletti?
Sardelletti, yeah, that sounds good to me. Matthew Sardelletti. So he played for again another right shot D. Just the way that worked out, but a right shot D that. We think he's kind of a little undersized right now, but give him some growth in major midget or tier 2 level somewhere if the right spot presents itself. But he's a player that he's got good compete level, decent skill level. So we figured at that point in the draft, he'd be a good pick there for sure. So if we get to this stage in the draft, our list, I've seen it some years where we've had 30 guys left on our list, maybe even a few more. And this year we only had about a dozen to 15 guys left on our list.
Nice.
So, yeah.
So overall, how did you feel about the picks in the draft? Do you guys feel like it was a strong year as far as the selections went?
Yeah, I mean, from positioning in the draft, we were 424 last year. We took Piercy at 15, and then didn't pick till we took Tyson Forrester at 55. We took Russell, right? So you just look at positioning in the draft. I mean, going into it, we were, you get a little more excited about it, knowing who you could get, and then, when we finished our second round, and we're sitting there after picking Del Monte, and we're like, if we can get Ryan Del Monte to come here, we just got 2 first-round picks, and we've just finished 24 picks in the OHL draft, and the best defenseman in the draft too. I put a bit of a premium on. It's a little more difficult to get high-end defensemen than high-end forwards. I mean, that's just, you'd have to look at that over time, over say a 5-year period or something like that. But after we're sitting there, figure we got one of the highest skilled forwards in the draft. You've got Wright, you've got Othman, Arnsby brings a different type of game. Lockhart's got a ton of speed. A really good player as well. Mason McTavish, drafted by Peterborough, more of a powerful kid that shoots the puck real well. But as far as skill and vision and ability to distribute the puck, Del Monte is right up there with all those guys. So we're, that's an excellent start to the draft. Then you go from there. But the fact that we got Frask was a player that we identified for early in the year, and he's a guy that we had kind of like on a wish list. And we felt like we got an excellent goaltending prospect, Zagrzebski from Wisconsin. We just went over all of them here, but these are guys that we've, I'd say after round 5 or round 3, I say 6 or 7 guys that can play on this team, and maybe if we get lucky, maybe another one or two, right? So yeah. I don't know. I haven't.
Obviously, it's early to get too much of an answer on that. It might not have been a great question as far as that goes, but I mean, even with the guys that you mentioned from the last year's draft, I mean, guys like Piercy and Forrester who came in this year, and I mean, especially the season,
Matthew Shreddle. I mean, we put him on a plan here. He's going to stay. He's finishing his school at Innisdale here, and so he's here for another 2 months. He's already. When he came to us, he was coming from Honeybake U16 minor midget to the OHL. It was a big jump. It's a big jump for him, and but there were some things that he, training wise and stuff, he just didn't have that knowledge before. Now he's coming here and he knows what he needs to do, and he's already he's put on muscle and all that kind of stuff. So. With our young players from that draft that played with us, they showed definite strides. I think with Piercy being a bit of a bigger kid, that it's going to maybe take just a little more time to come into his own, but he showed some definite strides over the course of the year. And I think with Tyson Forrester, I don't think, again, we went obviously younger this year. I don't think too many people would have expected him to, come in and did what he did. I mean, he was on the power play there, pretty much a staple on it from Christmas onward. And I think somebody was saying there was a 10 game stretch where he had, 9 points or something like that. So I don't know. The way I see it, I think Tyson Forrester can come in next year and put up a good 60 points, or maybe, maybe he had 70 points as a point a game player. But some other guys that aren't playing there, that weren't with us this year, Eric Russell, and he played a full year with the Lakeshore Patriots. And, he's a goal scorer. He could have, probably played with us this year too, full time. But tier 2 was the good spot for him. Like Durazio, played this year in Newmarket. He had a really good year. Austin Durazio. Took him in the 5th round last year. And then some of these other guys, Ian Devlin, Bryce Sutherland had a very good year in major midgets. Storm Mersch Karlstad, unbelievable pedigree in this kid. I mean, his father was a world-class speed skater in Norway. So with Olav, I think it's my old Olympic memory from the early 90s, Johan Olav Koss, I think, was one of the top skaters, and this guy was up there. I mean, obviously we're not drafting long track, short track speed skaters, but this kid's an athlete, and he had a good year in major midget, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, and some of these, this goalie, Jacob Robillard, had a really good year with the Hawkesbury Hawks. He could be a prime candidate to play on the Collingwood team. They got him listed at 5'10", 166 when we drafted him here from last season. He's a good 6 foot. I'd say at least 175 now.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these other guys like Oliver Reed, he's a right shot D that, Stratford, he played up some games with them, and they're all over him. He's going to be like a top 3 defenseman for them next year if he doesn't make us. That's what they're telling us. Like Matt Coronado, we kind of went for a home run there, and that was the 14th round, but we got to see him. He went to Salisbury Prep School, and his intention is to graduate from there. So, that means we're going to have to wait on him a little bit longer. But
Mm-hmm.
We saw him play a couple times this year, and he's second, third round skill in this draft, right? So, you never know. We might get lucky there. But I don't know if you remember from last year's camp, Nathaniel Hanley.
Yes.
Pretty sure he had a hat trick in one of the scrimmages. He's playing on that same program that Kevin LeBanc played in. And the coach develops lots of players there, and LeBanc was one of them. Cam Deneen, Joel Gambardella in the Edmonton system. There's a lot of players that are kind of sneak through the radar and go through this program in New York and play for this Bob Thornton. But he's a player that can potentially come in here and make this team this year too. So
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day, I'm mentioning a lot of names, and I don't obviously mention every single name we drafted in 18. Just have to see some of these players here develop, but. I think at the end of the day, it looks like we're going to have some tough decisions to make. So that's,
Mm-hmm.
It should be a good thing, right?
Absolutely. It's better having a situation where you're like trying to find out who you can fit in and when you can fit them in, as opposed to kind of trying to like force somebody in and just kind of get them there. So it's not a bad case to have, anyways.
Yeah.
And we've got that, and then as we said, it's this weekend is the rookie camp. So is that available for everyone can come in?
So it's at the Molson Center. They're keeping the ice in here until May. The Collingwood team's actually going to have their part of their rookie camp here. It's a 4-day thing there. It's two at the Molson Center and then 2 at the Eddie Bush in Collingwood. That's like May 7th, 8th. That week there, but our Barrie Colts development camps April 13th, 14th. So April 13th, we're on the ice here practicing and working out with goalies from like 2 to 5 p.m. in the afternoon, and then on Sunday morning we do a scrimmage at 10:30 in the morning, and a full game, and then we do exit interviews with them, and then they be on their way for a little bit. So.
Well, it gives Colts fans a chance to come out and kind of get an idea of some of the possible people that are going to be coming in, and just new faces to them, anyways, and kind of get at least somewhat of an expectation as what they may or may not even see coming next season. Yeah. So it's good that we've got at least I've already got the itch to watch hockey already, anyways. So
yeah, it's great to have obviously a high pick in the draft and whatnot, but we'd rather be playing right now too, right? You look at it that way. We're competitive people. We've won the division. We have a decent track record. We haven't won the whole thing here yet. Come close, but no, we want to be competitive and win. So next year we definitely want to be playing at this time for sure.
Well, and sometimes to get to that point, that is part of the process, is being able to bring in some of the higher ranked guys and stuff like that. So while you do want to be obviously playing this time of year, as far as the worst case scenario, it could hopefully be beneficial, obviously, moving forward.
Yeah.
I've already taken up almost an hour of your time. I don't know if are you needing to get away right away, or
no? I can hang around for
just a couple more questions. We took to Twitter and stuff, and I'm not gonna go through all of the questions, but just a few things that we kind of maybe touched on. As we obviously brought up Collingwood getting the team. How much does that kind of help things here, just kind of having that team there? Does it?
Well, I think they used to have a team there, as you can recall, a number of years ago. There hasn't been Tier 2 around here. They used to have a team out in Couchiching, which with the Couchiching Terriers, the Colts were affiliated with. That was back in the 2000s. And then, like the Aurora Tigers, the Newmarket Hurricanes have always been around, but the last couple of years we've done an affiliation with Aurora. But really, if you look at, there hasn't been a lot of their players come up here. And essentially, what you use an affiliation for, there's two different affiliation options in the OHL. They're called A and B. But so option B is we go with that every year, where you pick one team to go with, and then you can also affiliate all 50 men on your protected list. Okay. So wherever a player plays in London Junior B, Collingwood Junior A, wherever, you can call them up, and then you have one team that you work with as well. So with like Aurora in the past, they've had their sights set on other players, and they go use those players. They weren't necessarily draft picks of the Barrie Colts more so. So we were kind of feeding off other teams. There were the other teams throughout the province. So, but anyways, to make a long story short, with Howie Campbell here, the owner, he's always looking for different ways to do things, and if you could think outside of the box every once in a while. But he was kind of asking me over the last couple of years, I'd say, about if you could get a tier 2 team and have somewhat control over it and have a part running it. Would that be beneficial for us? So it said, basically said I didn't see much downside to it, as long as obviously the team, you want to, make a little bit of money or break even, or however you want to do that. That's up to them. But from a hockey perspective, to have the ability to put a few draft picks there, some, maybe it's like the Tanner Pearsons of the world, those guys that needed 2 years of tier 2 before they came here, right? So I think when you run the team, you have somewhat control over the team, you can also they're part of your program too, right? The Barrie Colts program. So Tanner Pearson ended up coming here. We didn't lose him to college, but maybe the next player, if you send him away to play somewhere further away, and you don't have him under your umbrella, so to speak, then maybe you might lose a kid or two, right? So with Collingwood, if we can help stock their team, help them with a goalie or two, have a goalie developing. Like, that's always a tough position to find a 16-year-old goalie spot, right? Like even we haven't Kenzie Blackwood. He was in Elmira. Part of the reason we drafted him too, because we knew he would move from Thunder Bay to go to Elmira, right? No. So we didn't want him staying in Thunder Bay. But I think with there's all kinds of different ways where you can make the Collingwood team and that association, really, if it helps you develop one or two players a year, then it's really going to be beneficial.
Yeah. Well, the good thing too is, like, as you mentioned, you guys did some work before with like Aurora, for example, and a lot of the people, like the general manager and like scouts and stuff like that, are now with the Collingwood side. So it kind of gives you the familiarity already with people that are going to be working in that system as well.
Yeah, for sure. And their coach that was announced on Saturday, their head coach is going to be Greg Johnston. He's I would say a personal friend, but he's somebody that's been pretty close to this organization, and he comes in he comes in and helps us out with some things on players, and he's a really good hockey guy. He'll be a really good teacher for those players playing in Collingwood, right? So it'll be that was just announced on Saturday during the draft.
Yeah. I know it's good to have that for sure. And also after the draft as well, as we kind of touched on a little bit with Williamson coming in. How is that going to be beneficial, like, to you, for example, as far as daily operations? And
well, yeah, I think, like, already showed, like, he gave his input into this draft. And I mentioned the Lake Hall, the late 10th round pick there before. But Marty's been, he's been a coach in the league. He's been a GM and coach in the league at the same time. And he has a pretty good network. He lives out, he's still going to be coaching Brock U. And I think, he's going to be coaching the Niagara major midget team. Obviously his he has a commitment to Brock, so it's hard to coach two teams. But Marty's going to add a lot of knowledge and a lot of experience, and a good sounding board, and a guy that's even though he's been out of the OHL for a couple of years, he still has pretty good a network of people and connections that he works with, right?
And the experience is there already as well. A lot of our followers were really, when that was announced, were really excited about that. So it's, and like you said, just having somebody else in there to kind of help out with stuff like that has the connections, that has, that knows people and that has done it before. I mean, that it's obviously not a bad thing.
Yeah.
And then you guys, obviously, we had the news of Hawerchuk for another sign for 4 years, it was?
Yeah.
How was there was no, because obviously, like, the last time it was the same thing, like, it wasn't something that was set prior to when, like, the season had ended. He conducts it in the sense that he deals with it after the year is over. So, like, there probably wasn't any concern of whether or not that he would be back or not, or...
Yeah, I mean, no, I think that sometimes these things are done, like you say, during, season. You see other teams announce extensions and whatnot during mid-season and stuff like that. But our he's the longest serving coach here now in history. I think it's been that way for, I don't know when he hit that mark, but not too long ago. I think with Dale here, we've had a taste of having some really successful teams. And then, the last couple of years is, last year, we had some success and won the division, but the last 2 years, or this past year, and then 2 years ago, just missing the postseason. Like personally too, it hasn't been, hasn't been easy. Like, just going back to how my life has kind of gone, I've always, put forth an effort, and if you work hard, things seem to work out for you. And sometimes you do those things and they don't necessarily work out for you. Not one to kind of take it as, tomorrow will be another day. Like, we take it really seriously, and we're really passionate. We like to be right all the time, but obviously that's not.
Unfortunately, that's not always an option.
Work out that way, but
exactly.
Kind of what I'm alluding to is just that Dale. He's a competitor, and he's, I'm the same way, and we really want to get this thing back going. And I think, from an organizational perspective, I don't think there was any question that Dale was going to be our next head coach. Right? He's done a fantastic job here, and I think that over the years he's gotten a lot of great experience. And I think we get the right kids in here, and the kids that really want to treat this like it's their job, and they're investing into their future, and they're taking these 3-4 years that they play here, maybe 5. They play here in the OHL and really taking it seriously and giving it their all. I mean, there's a lot of money at stake for these players to go to the next level. So I think when, at the end of the day, we can help develop players like that, do it together, get the right kids in here going to work, and then the sky's the limit with Dale. And, one of these years, I think we're going to break through and be really successful.
Well, I'm sure a lot of fans will be excited to hear that anyways. And speaking of fans, we did a little bit of a Twitter thingy, just think if anybody had some questions. So we'll try to get through these last couple of questions here so you can kind of carry on with your day. I really appreciate that you took the time to obviously sit down with me and talk about this. A lot of guys, I guess, are obviously, it's early to kind of make a mind or to even come up with a plan, and it might not even be in your control at this point. But obviously Tyler Tucker is a big name going around where everyone's, I think some fans are a little bit worried about the possibility of him not, maybe returning. I don't know if maybe because of like with last season, maybe with like Magwood going to the Predators organization.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's early. He just got the chance to try out for the Rampage. It is so obviously a lot of stuff that's out of your control. But any thoughts on? Again, like it's hard to answer, but just trying to hit up some of the questions. That
I would say. I mean, that's a really that's a great question. The best way to answer that, I would say, probably comparing him to Magwood really wouldn't be comparing apples to apples kind of thing, because Magwood was an overage, so it's he could have played in the American League. I think with Tyler, with Tyler Tucker, it's either NHL or Barrie Colts, right?
Yeah.
And I think you've been around long enough. That's a really big jump. Look at Alex Pietrangelo. He came back and played a full year after playing World Junior and all that kind of stuff, right? He was a 4th overall pick.
Yeah.
Tyler Tucker was a 7th round pick. Now, his value right now, I would say, in NHL circles is without way more than a 7th round pick. I think St. Louis is very smart. They got a really good player on their hands there. But that being said, I don't know if you go over the last 5 years, how many 19-year-old defensemen have played in the NHL?
It doesn't happen very often.
Was it New Jersey took in the 6th round? Not Branston. There was a Jesper Bratt.
Okay.
Or something. He was a defenseman, I think. He made it at 19, but he came after playing with men in Sweden, right?
Yeah.
So, from an organization, just from my experience, and to give you the best, best guess I could say it, I would say Tyler Tucker would probably need to do another year of development in the OHL. But again, I'm not the St. Louis Blues, and ultimately, like you said before we started the question, it's out of our control, right?
Yeah, and that's the big thing too. I mean, I think a lot of people expect that will be the case because, like you said, I mean, generally defensemen don't necessarily break into the NHL at that age. A lot of times, it's not like with forwards. Sometimes they take a little bit more time, whether it be to develop or just to kind of prepare themselves, whether it be that there's less spots for that or whatever. But I think people are just a little bit anxious and see to see. I mean, because Tucker had a great season.
It's good that if you look at it, it's good that they're asking that question, right? Because that just shows that what they think of him. But I would say Tyler Tucker, he's Hockey Canada. I think he's on their radar a little bit. World Junior. Hopefully he can make that World Junior camp next year and see if he makes the team. And Texas, I mean, he's come a long way. He hit 60 points this year, and he plays. I still think he's the toughest, kid at that age group, at the 2000 age group, right? So
we do our annual Pony Awards there, and we've got the hardest hitter, and it's just been the 3 years we've done it, but it's the second year since we've implemented that one category in both seasons. It's been very unanimous. Like sometimes we kind of fluctuate because we do it me, Justin, and Ryan. We do the voting ourselves other than the fan vote.
Yeah.
And it's both times. It's been it's been we kind of sometimes butt heads on different categories.
Yeah, I kind of compare Tyler Tucker to a player. He's got more offense than him, but Eric Reitz, he played here, and he won the Defenseman of the Year in the 01-02 year. I remember, and he was a 6th round pick by the Wild. He needed the full year. He came back, but I see even Tyler as having more natural offense than Eric Reitz. But you're just talking about physicality and stuff like that. Eric Reitz was, the two that were very similar that way.
Well, I think a big thing with Tucker too was, I mean, when he came in, obviously, he was defensively, he was reliable, and he had that the physicality and the size to kind of back it up. But obviously, his offensive production this season it jumped massively. So I mean, it's good to see him still be able to maintain what it was that kind of got him recognized, but then also kind of incorporate more offensive threat generating shots. He seemed to be firing the puck all the time, so it was great to really see him kind of incorporate more of that style. I don't know if he was kind of if that was a goal of his going into the season, or
we took Tyler in the first round, so his Titans team, in that his draft year never made the playoffs. But we didn't draft him just to be a physical defense. We saw the offensive minor midget and whatnot. But his 16-year-old year was the year we were in a rebuild. But he played a lot of minutes. If you look at his as a 16-year-old, he was right up there for minutes when you compare him against the other defensemen in the league. But that being said, his offense, you can agree or disagree. Maybe you saw it a bit you saw it a bit earlier, but I think last year in the playoffs, the series against Mississauga, he really stepped up and scored some big goals for us. And all game 4, we were down we were down in the third, and then we won the game in overtime.
And then you get the tying, and then you got the winner in OT.
And then game 5, he scored the winner, CNI point shot kind of thing. So. He's coming into, I should say finally, but he's coming into his own as far as the numbers. He had a fantastic year.
He really did. Anybody this season that kind of, I don't like to say necessarily exceeded your expectations, but was there any guy on the roster that kind of, maybe gave you a little bit more than maybe you might have anticipated?
I'd say if you look at maybe some of the young guys like Jack Greaves, our goalie. I mean, there were some of those, big wins we had against Ottawa towards the end. Yeah, there were some games where he obviously struggled, but his save percentage was, from December more so trade deadline on was right there. You look at the rookie goalies in the league, There was the Roy kid played some good mileage with Hamilton, but his numbers weren't as high as Greaves' were his save percentage and his overall just efficiency. But he would probably be one. There was a number of guys that young guys that surprised us in a good way this year, and maybe did a little bit more than we thought they could have. So I mean, he'd be one for sure. Maybe Tyson Forrester, you could throw his name into that hat a little bit. Like some of those other young guys made some really good strides on defense. Matthew Hill and some of the guys we got in the trades. They did very well too. So.
Actually, speaking of the Pony Awards, Hill got our. We used the name like most improved for it, but as far as just it was another situation where it was unanimous. Hill really came like a long way. I was very, very impressed by his game. He was very reliable. Some of his stick work and I was very impressed by his game this season. And obviously Greaves, who we spoke really highly of during the season. And I mean, like you said, his numbers were just incredible. He had those 2 back-to-back games where he had 50 plus shots. And I mean, they were both. I think that you guys have never
Mississauga and London. I think.
I think that the London one might have gone to overtime. I can't remember exactly offhand, but
Sudbury
just
we won in Sudbury 1-0. He beat Lucan and we won in overtime that game. I'm pretty sure it was 1-0.
He looked so confident. Just watching him out there, his focus. He's just. It was he was just unreal. Just incredible season for him.
Yeah.
Let me see if just about done here.
Yeah.
I guess I think we got most of them anyways. Wilms, I guess we could kind of just dabble on here just to kind of close this out anyways. Who obviously got named captain after Murray was dealt to Saginaw.
Yeah.
How did you think of him this season, especially with that leadership role as well?
I think his production is obviously down a little bit this season, but his production improved this year as the year went on. So, with Jason Williams, he does so many. If he's not scoring, he does so many other good things. He was named one of the top face-off guys or something in the Eastern Conference.
His face-off numbers were great. I don't have them up in front of me right now, but they were like
over 50%. He took a lot of draws too. Yeah. So I think he does a lot of things well. He brings accountability, a lot of character to the dressing room. He's just a tremendous kid. Very. Well, I'd say low maintenance, but I mean, his first couple of years in the league here was, and this will be more this year. That's why he was named captain, right? It show up to the rink, work hard, be positive. Everybody trying to pull together in the same direction to win, right? That's what Jason Williams is about. So, I can't speak, more highly of a character kid like Williams. He's one of our better 99s, and we expect to have him back next year.
No, for sure. He was just, and like you said, just like his compete level in all areas. Like he plays just a solid 200-foot game, and he's just reliable everywhere in all situations. So, and it seems like the guys on the team also really seem to they seem to genuinely like him as well. And I mean that's obviously a huge factor as well. So
yeah.
And I think that pretty much wraps it up. So I just really want to thank you again for this opportunity to talk to you, to inform us, especially with the draft stuff. I know that I was able to kind of learn a lot from it. I'm sure our listeners also are not only excited about
rugby. In the draft, actually, I thought it was going to go later than it did because the league had some issues.
There was like a blackout or something? I remember following it.
The wind.
Yeah, just
stuff. So
wild.
I thought it was going to go till 7, 8 o'clock at night, but...
They actually wrapped it up pretty decently.
Yeah, they cut the breaks. So usually they have a longer lunch break, and they ended up foregoing the second break after the 10th round. So it saved about an hour doing that. But anyways, we got through with it, and it kind of reminds me of the first when we kind of took over the operation here back in the '96 draft. That's obviously more than a few years ago. That year we were playing Ottawa in the second round of the playoffs, so we moved the draft and did it at the Westin Hotel in Ottawa in between the games 1 and 2. And there was some kind of an internet failure, so that there was on the line it was about half an hour behind. So a lot of the kids who were calling hadn't seen their name on the internet yet, but it's a couple little technical challenges, and again, they got through with it. And some people, like the way the Quebec League still does it, where they still do it in an arena and have all the kids there. But I don't know. This is what we're used to, and it works pretty good.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, when I was following along, because like when it first started kind of dropping, and so I had to go from the video side and kind of just go to where they have the actual list. And I think it was like, I can't remember exactly what round it was, but it kept going back to the 6th round. So I kept refreshing. I'm like, come on, where are we? I know we're like a few rounds ahead of this, but obviously when they're having the power issues as well, there's only so much that you can do about it. So
so another draft too this year, we had like the Collingwood guys, like you touched on a little bit earlier, Dermot Anderson, he was to be in Aurora. Now he's going to be in Collingwood, so there's some great familiarity there as well.
And Dermot's great.
Yeah, and with those guys, with Dave Steele too, running that team, he's very passionate. He ran a really good program with Stainer Junior C, and it was basically either them or the Alliston team that would, really prevail in the Junior C loop, right? But to have those guys running Collingwood and helping develop our players there and running their program there, I think it looks very beneficial. It looks very positive for the Barrie Colts.
Yeah, I've talked to both Dave and Dermot a little bit. And with Dermot, like I've talked to him since he was in Aurora and stuff, and both of them just seem very, very excited and very motivated about it. So I mean, you can't ask for better qualities for people that have in that position, right? So. And was there anything else you wanted to kind of touch on here? Or?
No, we got rookie camp coming up, and then we'll fill in the gaps. The training camp's a little ways away, obviously, as you know. But
we got the import actually. Just when exactly is that?
The import draft is it's the week after the NHL draft, so it'll be towards the end of June. So with this year in the import draft, like Matej Picard is signed with Buffalo. So the OHL has a rule: if you have a player like a 19-year-old that's already signed, you can draft 2. So I anticipate drafting 2 players this year. And
nice.
I'm actually going to be going over to the under-18 tournament on the 17th to go to Sweden and watch that tournament. So we have a good pick in the import draft this year, and hopefully we can
is it a situation where you have
we can turn that into another player?
And is it a situation kind of with this where like you kind of maybe have an idea as far as like what kind of a role you might be looking to fill, or is it kind of a matter of seeing who's available and going for what might be the best possible?
I think it's kind of feeling it out and seeing who's available, and then we'll really go from there. It doesn't really give you a lot insight into it.
Well, I mean, there's still a ways out anyways, I'm sure. It's, so it wasn't really a question that I could have really expected much of an answer from anyways. So, I mean, sometimes we just got to throw terrible questions at you and just hope for the best. But anyways, that was one of those times. So, and again, I'd like to thank you very much for your time. And I know that I appreciate it. I'm sure that all of our listeners do as well. So, thank you again.
Okay. Thanks for having me, Ryan.
Excellent. No problem. Thank you.